Welcome back to Case Studies. I'm with one of my all-time favorite people in the entire world. And we were actually talking this morning, and I said this to you. You're like, I've got my list of like top 5, and you're on that list of just like, one, the people who've like influenced me the most, but second, like the people who I look up to the most out of like anybody in my life. And so it's so fun to, one, have you on here, and two, to share your story, because you're not like a public figure. You don't do this stuff. And your story is like such a beautiful story that like, I'm just excited to talk about it. So anyway, thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me. And that's nice of you to say all that stuff.
It's just truth. It's just what it is.
I feel the same way about you.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the very beginning, because everybody kind of sees Alex Dunn today, and you see kind of this linear line of these successes, you know, of BYU graduate, and then, you know, helping Mitt Romney and building these billion-dollar businesses, and LHM partner, and it was all like up and to the right. I want to go back to the, you know, to the start, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely doesn't feel, you know, like up and to the right. It was maybe more when you were in it. I remember, I've talked about this in other settings, but I remember going to the Entrepreneur Lecture Series at BYU, and honestly, like leaving more discouraged than like encouraged.
Yeah.
Because I'd go and, you know, like these people seem to be like perfect.
Just had it dialed.
Like, dialed in, and they're waking up at 4 a.m. and they're writing a book by 7, and they're, you know, just amazing people. And I remember being like, I feel kind of normal, you know, I think I have strengths. I'm confident in myself, but I'm also like, I don't like getting up in the morning. It's like and so I would leave thinking, I wonder if I have what it takes to like kind of be an entrepreneur. Or to be like those people. And truthfully, I have been lucky enough to be involved with some, you know, amazing success. But if I was being true to like, how I felt going through that, it has felt more like, hey, you know, like sometimes I feel inadequate. Sometimes I feel scared. Like the fear of losing, you know.
Which is so funny, because like I worked for you for a long time, and I would always think of you as just bulletproof. You know what I mean? Like you and Todd were just exceptional leaders, and you guys led some hard, you know, there was like some rough waters over the course of the journey. And so it's actually funny to hear that, like, you're scared. You didn't know it was going to work out. Like, you know what I mean?
You saw, I mean, and I think that's where you hear sometimes leaders say it's lonely. People say it's lonely at the top, or it's lonely to be a leader. You know, I experienced that. The great thing is I always had Todd, you know, like we were always able to kind of be completely honest with each other. But you know, when you're a leader, people are looking to you to lead. And so, you know, it's like, look, even if I am feeling like nervous about failing, or feeling like, can I do this? Like, that's the role you're in, is you have to go. And I think I've always tried to be authentic. And so like, I tried never to, I think you guys knew when, hey, here's what's going on.
Yeah.
Here's what we have to go get done in order to kind of navigate through these challenges. And so we were always honest, not like, oh, you know, a leadership style that doesn't resonate with me is like, when there are challenges, it's like, this is amazing. You know, like we're in the best situation we've ever, you know, and it's like, everybody kind of knows like, hey, that's probably not really the case.
Yeah.
And so I've always tried to make sure that stuck with me, like how I felt when I like would hear people speak about their successes. It was like they just seemed like it was always up and to the right.
But talk to me a little bit about leadership, because I just think you're an exceptional leader, but you've had amazing leaders in your life. Like where did you learn these skills? Like who were like the models of what a good leader is for you growing up? You know what I mean? Like who are the ones that you looked at and say, hey, I took this from this person, and I took this from this person, and this helped me be a better leader?
In fact, I've been lucky to be around amazing people. Helping Mitt Romney, run his gubernatorial campaign, and then being his deputy chief of staff. I learned a ton from him. But actually, for me, like developing as a leader was actually, I initially thought I had to be like other people. That's why it was kind of discouraging for me to go.
Because you just said, that's not me.
I'd be like, that's kind of not me. I'm not like how they are.
Yeah.
And I thought, I have to be how they are in order to like have the success
that's what success looks like.
Yeah. That's kind of what the path to success. And so honestly, probably the most important path or most important lesson I learned through, early in my career was what I needed to be was like true to myself. Like, who was I? Like, what was I good at? And then also like, I've talked about this in other settings too, but like strengthening your strengths. Like, and so I needed to discover like, okay, well, what am I good at?
Yeah.
Like, what are my strengths? What are the things that like I can bring to the table?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we have a tendency to want to be good at the things we're not good at.
Yeah.
And we take for granted the things that like come easy to us.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, that's kind of easy. Like people, like I think I'm a pretty good leader, like in turmoil, like when there's challenges, crisis,
yep,
like when where you're like, okay, I can like buckle down.
You're like a wartime CEO for sure. Like,
and maybe that's partially because there was a lot of those.
Yeah.
There was a lot. We went through a lot in all of the companies that I've been involved with. And that's been more my experience. And so again, I look and say, it hasn't been up and to the right. It's like crazy. There's days before we did our deal with Blackstone, and that was like at a north of a $2 billion valuation. Like months before that, we were having conversations with some of our existing investors that were kind of saying, we're not sure you've created any equity value in this business. And they invested at like a $40 million valuation. And, there was part of me that was like, is that true? Like, I don't know.
You felt like you had. You felt like you created like.
But there was obviously some question as to whether or not we had.
Yeah.
And so, it for me, it's not linear at all. My experience has been like, that it's hard, that you go forward, that you go back, and that the kind of key lessons are like, hey, be true to who you are, be authentic, and then understand what your strengths are, fill in around you so you have.
Because I think that's something that I've always admired about you is you surround yourself with great people. And not just great people who are different than you, like very like distinct differences. And I think, that when I look at you and say, these are the things that Alex does that I want to do in my life, you attract really great people and they're attracted to you, and that was the story with Vivint. That was the story with Vivint Solar. When you worked with Mitt, then you were able to work. You always at LHM now, your team is just, you guys just have exceptional people with very different skill sets, shared values, but very different skill sets. Yep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that natural? Is that like just when you said, hey, double down on your strengths? Is that just something that's intuitive to you that you just said, I know I need to get people around me that are great?
Yeah. I have realized that I actually don't like succeeding alone. I think there are leaders, and I'm actually not, there's no judgment in this statement. Like, I think if you are kind of
lone wolf.
Yeah, like there are people that are like, hey, it is me.
Yeah.
And like I don't want partners. I don't want um then I think you should be true to that. Because if you try to be the other way, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
For me, I actually have realized I don't want to be alone on the journey.
Yeah. And you've tried that. Like I think about, you going and building out the SPAC and doing some of this stuff. And it was more of like a lone.
Yeah, that I had partners, Solomir Capital in Boston and Paul Ryan and stuff. But I've realized I just don't and it's worked for me. Like I've realized when you have great people, that especially when you get people that are like whatever the opportunity is growing into them, instead of I tried never to have too many people, because I was actually that guy. I was always growing into the opportunity. What I was doing, most of what I've done in my career, I've never done before. I've never built, when we did Vivint, I'd never built a multi-billion-dollar business. And then solar, it's I'd never taken a company public. I'd never, all these things that we accomplished. So I tried to have a good balance of people that the company could grow into.
Yeah.
And I realized, they're going to bring the company along with them.
So kind of hiring ahead a little bit.
Yeah, you're hiring ahead.
Yeah.
And now the company's instead of everybody trying to keep up with the opportunity,
it's growing into that.
It's they're bringing the company into where their capabilities are.
Yeah. So I was listening to the commencement speech randomly this morning, popped up on my YouTube, of Steve Jobs. It was his Stanford commencement speech.
I've listened to it a lot.
And it was so inspiring to me. He's talking about getting fired from Apple. And a very public firing. He's 30 years old and kind of felt like he let the tech world down and was thinking about leaving the valley and, embarrassed. And he's going to the Hewlett Packards and his mentors and just kind of embarrassed. He's 30 years old. And then he talks about realizing that he really liked building companies.
Yeah.
And he got back in it and he, did Pixar and he did Next and met his wife and, ultimately ends up Apple, buys his technology and it kind of becomes the foundation. And, Apple 2.0 couldn't have happened.
That's right.
Without him getting fired. He wasn't the leader. He wasn't the leader and couldn't have, and he said that. He said, I wouldn't have had my family. I wouldn't have got these experiences, but it was not the medicine that I wanted or would have chose. And talk to me about that, kind of connecting the dots, going back versus.
Which I'm a big believer in. I think when you look back, you can clearly see how the dots connect.
Yeah.
When you're in the middle of it, it seems
hard.
chaotic.
So
it's
hard.
There is no meaning or these aren't going to connect.
Yeah.
But look, I started my first company, with a friend of mine who I'd served a mission, with. And in Boston, I was a junior at BYU. He was going to MIT. And it was just a professional services company, but it was we had a bunch of MIT engineers. Some of them, Jeremy Warren, JT Wang, guys,
the legends,
that ended up being really important parts of our success at Vivint. But the internet was just becoming commercialized, and so we built some really cool systems. And at that point, the internet was brand new. And so
you guys were at the cutting edge.
Yeah, web browsers couldn't really do anything. It was we were building custom software that now is like not a big deal.
Yeah. But then it was
like
because what year was that?
That was 95.
So this was like 6 years before the bust. Like you guys,
we were before
even
the bubble had started to form.
Yeah.
We were like kind of in the middle of, and honestly, I look back and say, man, if I would have like had some vision, like I probably, we were like, professional services firm, but we were building tools. I remember we built this messaging tool that was like it was just like a little messaging tool that was based off of something they had at MIT. And there was a company called AIM that like, I think it was AOL bought for like, billions of dollars. That was this messaging tool that we had built just for like the engineers had built to like communicate.
Yeah.
Anyway, but long story short, I end up, there was me, initially it was me, my business partner's wife and my business partner, were the owners of the business.
Yeah.
And
what was the cap table at that point?
That was like a third.
Okay, so his wife, him, you, third. Okay.
And then she kind of didn't want to be in the business, and we brought on another partner and essentially like bought her out.
Yeah.
Brought this guy on who had been the CEO at monster.com. He was older than,
she's a big, like, this was like a big time hire.
It was a big time. It was a big
kind of
coup.
Punching above your weight at that point. It's like, this is,
and he came on and really helped us raise a lot of.
And you're how old at this point?
25.
That's like 25 how did you 26. Have like the belief that I can do this? You know what I mean?
See,
like
that I did it. I looking back, I'm like, it just was like, it was more organic. It was like Justin, who was my partner, was like, hey, I think people need like MIT software engineers.
Because he's like genius, right?
He's a genius. Yeah. Super smart guy.
Yeah.
He's like, people need, it started because he would go to the MIT job board, which was like a cork board that people would like back then, like pin note cards up to with like phone numbers on the end of it, like cut up. And so you could like rip off a phone number. And it's like, hey, I need a software engineer to do this. So he'd go to the job board, he'd like look, he'd rip the phone numbers and call. And that's how he was like getting himself through MIT. Then he's like, well, I think there's people that need like 10 engineers. And he's like, that's how like the idea started. And then he called and he's like, hey, can you come back? I think we could like turn this into a business. So I like went back during the summer between my junior and senior year and kind of helped get it started. And so it wasn't, it
happened pretty organic.
Yeah. It was like, there's a need. We can fill that need. It really enjoyed
it wasn't like you went and built a business plan and present like
there was no business plan.
It was just kind of like
there's a need.
There's a pain in the market, and you guys are filling it, and it just got momentum.
Yeah, and we started to get customers. We built Family Search. We built big systems like that were big deals at the time.
Wow,
like the largest searchable database online. And so we had really smart engineers. And so it was just like, I don't know, like this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I really liked it.
Yeah.
And, graduated, came back, graduated, got married, and then moved back to Boston. But looking back, I'm like, there were times that like we couldn't make payroll we paid other people, but not ourselves.
Not yourselves, yeah.
I was like, got a night job. Like it was.
So it's kind of hand to mouth a little bit where it was like, but probably like, still really exciting.
It was super fun. I loved it. Looking back, I'm like, man, I like took my new bride, like Debbie back there, not really knowing if I can get paid. I'm like,
ignorance really is bliss, isn't it? It's like, it's so
I
great.
was like, whoa, now I probably understand more why her parents were like, what are you doing? Like, go get a normal job,
But Debbie always believed in you, didn't she?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. So we went and did that, brought Miller Newton on as a CEO, And then I essentially, like, the three of us did not blend well.
Yeah.
And I got pushed out. Like, those two, like, decided that, you know, the business would be better without me, essentially. And so, kind of said, hey, it's time for you to leave, which was, you know, I had never thought. And it was a blow to my.
So that was one in this commencement speech where Steve Jobs was kind of saying, like, I got fired from my company. I didn't know I could get fired from my company. I'm the owner. I'm the founder. Like, go through that. Like, was that like because you kind of the only way to learn it is to learn it. It's like
I was shocked. I mean, when it happened, I was like, I was shocked. I'm like, and the interesting thing, and again, I've kind of told this story before, so apologize if people heard it, but like, I was sitting in this hotel. Justin and Miller were going to come, and I'd actually moved. We're professional services. We were in Boston. When we brought Miller on, Miller and I did things differently. We viewed the world differently, and he became a full partner. So it was then the three of us.
Yo.
And then we raised some capital. So we all diluted to, I think we raised something like $80 million of venture capital.
It was real
that
dollars.
was the,
it was real
that
dollars.
was the bubble. That was like the internet 1.0.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I moved to San Jose to like open our first
West
office
Coast.
outside of Boston.
Yeah.
And really to kind of come up with the model for opening new offices. And then we were going to like go to London and do that. And that was like exciting to me. And so I was in San Jose. Those two were coming out to like see how we were doing, and you know, we were going to connect. And they walked in. I vividly remember this. Like, I was sitting at this, like, on this bench in a hotel lobby right by where our office was. We were going to have breakfast. When they walked in, and that, you know, this came from God. Like, it was one of the times in my life where I think God like gave me like knowledge directly to my brain, you know. And they walked in, and I'm like, they're gonna fire. They're gonna
come on.
It like came super clearly
out of nowhere.
I mean, out of nowhere. Like, I had not that came out of nowhere. And then I was like, can they do that? I was like having this conversation, like, because I knew it was going to happen.
You just felt it.
I just knew. I came from God. Like, I knew it was going to happen. So we sat down, and I'm like, all this stuff's going through my head. Can they do, you know? And so,
because had it been building up like that,
there was some friction there with really me and Miller.
Yeah, more strategic, more like directional, or was it like personalities, or like what was like the
probably?
Because it feels like things were going good. You're raising outside capital. You got.
I think the issue probably was like, I was a partner in the business. Like, I owned as much of the business as the two of them.
Is he kind of treating you like an employee? Like,
yeah. And I think Miller really just wanted me to like be an employee.
Yeah.
And I was okay being an employee, like, in certain situations, because I had been the CEO when he came on. I'm like, look, you know, like, this is, I think, the best thing for the business is having someone that knows more than
has that experience.
I do. Yeah, has the experience. And so that was like, I willingly like agreed to that. But there were settings where I was okay saying, hey, you're the CEO, but then there were settings where
like, I'm a partner
in this business. And so in those settings, I'm like, you're not over me. And that was, I think, hard maybe for both of us to navigate. Yeah. Right. And so like, I'm sure I had as much to do with it as he did. Of course. So I'm not. Yeah. And so they came out, and he's at Miller's like, hey, you know, how's it going? And we actually were doing great in California. We had built the office, I think at that point, actually bigger than the Boston office. And wow. And he's like, hey, I think it's time for you to move on. And because like, you knew, like, I knew like 10 minutes before this. And so I remember looking at Justin and saying, hey, what? Because I knew at that point, I'm like, well, I guess if
2/3.
Like if the two of them agree, then I guess they can. And I looked at Justin, and
you knew.
Well, he said, I said, what are you, like, where are you at with this? And he's like, hey, I'm here if you need to talk. So I'm like, okay, I guess he's okay with this too.
Yeah.
And it happened. And honestly, it was devastating to me. I mean,
just crushed you.
It crushed me.
Yeah.
And it crushed my confidence. And I had not really thought about doing something else. We were like on this trajectory. We were going public.
Yeah.
We were going to be worth, competitors of ours were worth like billions of dollars on the public markets. And so I just I was in the middle of that and it crushed me. I mean, it took me a few years to honestly recover from that and gain my confidence back.
Yeah.
But it was super important. An important part of my story and the things I learned.
I know. Well, what's crazy about that? I'm just sitting here listening, and I was like, my career would not have happened without that happening. There's this course of human events. Yeah. That's like this has to
dots.
It's the dots,
and you look back and you're like,
I think about we wouldn't have joined Apex without you.
Yeah.
We just wouldn't have done it. You, for some reason, you just had the trust to myself and my wife, and you never would have started that journey without that one crashing. You know what I mean? Anyway,
and it took a while.
It's pretty crazy.
It took a while for me. I was an entrepreneur in residence at General Catalyst, which now is a huge firm. Back then, they were just brand new. The founders had an exit, and
how do you do this stuff? I think about these life. That's a rad experience, an entrepreneur in residence, and you're seeing, venture capital and deals happening at a young age.
You
just see it. You just see, hey, that would be an opportunity that'd be unique and interesting. And
yeah, I mean, if I'm being truthful, I'd say I was not. That was a dark time. I was my confidence was rocked.
Because if your identity's I'm a founder of $1 billion company, we're taking over the world, and then all of a sudden that
is gone.
I
don't know that I had an identity yet. I remember thinking, I've always been pretty confident in myself.
Yeah.
Still insecurities and all of that. I think people who try and pretend they don't have that are not being honest. But maybe there are people that just are everybody has that. But I did wonder, I'm like, are they right or am I right?
Yeah, of course.
Am I really, was I that bad?
Well, at that point, maybe you don't have enough reps to know.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know who I was.
It's kind of easier at this point to look back, and you've got enough chapters in the book to say, I just know who I am. I'm resilient. I will not be stopped.
Yeah.
I'll keep fighting. I'm battled.
I won't give up.
I'll never give up. All those things. That's I was talking to, Coach Pope, and he was talking about, getting fired 6 times or 7 times in the league. And even the decision to go coach basketball.
Yeah.
And that faith came from all the failures. It's I just know I'll never quit. I'm betting on myself because I've done that enough times. I just know that's a good formula. Hard work, good attitude, all in. You know what I mean? And at this point, it's you could start over and you just pick it back up. You've just done it too many. But at that point, you don't have that. You don't have that foundation of
But that actually is kind of the purpose, even of life for me, which is
that becoming.
It's the becoming.
Yeah.
Arriving is not actually the purpose.
Yeah.
I'm it's the process.
It's a bit of fool's gold too. You kind of think, when I get that car or when I get that million or what, that's when I'll be happy. And it's just not.
It's super empty.
Yeah.
At least it has been for me. And then I'm what I like is building. It's I like the process. I like kind of.
I remember you telling me that when you and Steve were talking about you going to LHM.
Yeah.
And I think anybody looking from the outside is that's an interesting choice because you have had success and don't need to kind of put the hard hat on and get building again. You know what I mean? You could kind of take a more passive role.
Yep.
And it was a really actually interesting insight for me about you and just who you are. Is like, I want to get in and I want to start building again. I want to be a part of a team and I want to like, and so it's insightful to see like even today.
And that was part of a process that's happening now. Like that happened, after, I mean, I knew I was a builder, but it's like it was all of those experiences where
you love the work.
Yeah.
You love the grind. Like, I
love building.
Yeah.
It's like building. Once I've built something, I'm like not as excited anymore.
That's when you're fulfilled. It's like when you're,
I'm like, I love seeing what I built.
Yeah.
But then like me looking at what I've built is not very exciting for very long.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I've done that.
Stephen Covey's got this quote where he says, satisfied needs don't motivate. And it's really insightful, like when you don't have it, it's kind of unsatiable. You just, you want it and you can work. Once you have it, you kind of check that box, and it's kind of what's next, moving on, it's on to the next thing. Yeah. So what, entrepreneur in residence.
So entrepreneur in residence. And really they had an idea for a company that I was helping them.
General Catalyst.
A General Catalyst.
I mean,
they're actually now like
a force of nature.
Top, like one of the top firms.
Yeah. Same leadership, same ownership there now. Or is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's much bigger, but the founders,
that's so cool.
David Fialco and Joel Cutler are the two founders of the firm. And now it's, again, it is a force of nature. Amazing what they built.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, my confidence was rocked. Like my dad actually passed away during that period of time.
He was like really important in your life.
Super important to me. And I was 29 now, it's like
still a baby,
still young.
Yeah. Still young.
And so honestly, looking back, if I have any, I try not to regret because I try to just say, hey, I do the best I can. And, but that's a period where I'm like, I don't know that I like was my best.
I'm not like completely proud.
Yeah. That's completely proud.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it was horrible, but
because you have so many things in your life that you can look back and say, I'm proud of that.
Yes.
I'm proud of what, we did with Mitt. Proud of what we did with Vivint. We built a great company, great culture, great technology.
It ended up being, actually, the company ended up being successful, probably more from other people that had come into that than me, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I left that and to go help Mitt run for governor.
Yeah. And how'd that come about? Because that like very different track. You know what I mean? Obviously, Boston. There's some connection with Boston.
Yeah.
You lived in Boston and founded your company in Boston.
It was honestly Tag, his oldest son, called me and was like, hey, my dad's thinking about coming back and running for governor from the Olympics, come back from the Olympics and running for governor. And he's like, I need some help for a few days.
Because he just like kind of saved the Olympics, right? Like him and Frazier, those guys had,
amazing job.
Yeah.
And Tag's like, I need to figure out like how he's going to get on the ballot. So I literally like went over to,
and Mitt at that point was kind of a force of nature. Like he,
I mean, he'd been at Bain Capital. He'd run for Senate. And so he'd had some experience running against Ted Kennedy.
Yeah.
And then done the Olympics.
Which looking back, it's like, that's a tough person to run against. Ted Kennedy's like.
Yeah. And he honestly, like for a little while was actually leading in the polls.
Yeah.
And then I think that awoke the
mob.
Everybody. Yeah. Like everybody
came after him.
Yeah. Like maybe literally the mob, but anyway, like, including everybody else. But, and so I went and, originally it was just going to be like a few days I was going to help him. And then that turned into really like 3 years. Like it turned into a year on the campaign.
Isn't that crazy? Like you think about like these big life decisions that started with like almost inconsequential choices. It's kind of like, I'm going to go just dabble.
You look back and in it feels chaotic. Like I promise you, I did not feel in all of this. I felt lost and like what, and then it'd be like, hey, I think this sounds interesting.
I'll get asked by friends. They're like, hey, how do you form Sandlot? And I was like, Dave was on the couch outside of my office, and like came buddies. And then like there was this breeze deal and,
That's right.
like this craziness in the market with COVID. And,
Yep.
you look back and you're like, how did that happen? Like that was a track that I didn't choose to get on. I had no aspiration to get on it. And all of a sudden I'm on it,
Yep.
and it's beautiful, but it's like,
take advantage of, I will tell people, I think the best way to like maximize the dots.
yeah.
Cause you don't know what the dots are.
Yeah.
Is to try and be as good as you can be in everything that you're doing.
Yeah. So Clayton Christensen, he kind of has this concept of like your deliberate strategy. This is my plan. I'm going this direction. And then these emergent opportunities that are like, you never saw coming that end up being
the strategy,
but
That's
you
right.
can't know them you kind of got to move. You got to pick a plan and go, but then be open to the off ramps. You know what I mean? Like, but
people would at Vivint, people would come and be like, hey, I want to be in your position, like in the future. I'd be like, okay, awesome. Like, if I go talk to your boss right now, tell me like what I'd be like, where are you at? They'd be like a college student. I'm in the call center.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, great. Tell me like, if I go talk to your boss right now, tell me what they're like going to tell me about you. Well, but I don't want to be in the call center. Like they're going to say that maybe I'm, kind of and I would say that's what like the dots connect or opportunity comes because you are good, even if it's in the call center.
Yeah.
If you're good,
yeah,
someone that will create an opportunity for you. And it happened, like, honestly, the way I started the first company was on my mission. I tried to work hard. I didn't know. And Justin, who went to MIT, we became friends. He knew that like I tried to work hard. That's it. He did. And the truth is, neither one of us knew anything about business. We didn't know.
You're just kind of attracted to each other because of like that.
We just tried to work hard.
Like,
we just tried. It's like if we're going to be in the mission, it's like, well, we're going to, try to work hard. It wasn't.
Yeah.
There was no grand plan or.
Yeah.
And so I look back and say, wow, me going on a mission was like important. Me like, trying to do my best. That didn't mean it's like, I had I don't like getting up. So that was hard for me. But I tried to do my best. And then that's what led Justin to be like, hey, he like, I'm going to call Alex and like get him involved with this. And so I'm like, well, what happens if I like on a mission, I wouldn't have like maybe tried my best.
Yeah.
And so I'm a big believer that it's like
you got to take care of it today.
Yeah.
Like be excellent today.
Don't worry about like that stuff will come.
Yeah.
If you like try to be the best call center person.
Yep.
That is how opportunity will come to you.
I think about what you're doing right now in your partnership with LHM. That does not happen
without
if you didn't
Vivint.
take care of the step one,
And it was our sponsorship deal.
Yeah.
And the relationship we formed.
You go learn
and
how
the
to work
success
together.
we had. All of that. I'm like 100%.
Yeah.
That came because of steps before it.
Which are still like the mission was the first.
It's
compounding results over a
100%.
lifetime. Yeah.
100%.
You get those bigger benefits at the tail end.
But in it, it's super important because I speak with, college kids a lot. I have a lot of college kids, in my family, my kids. Sometimes I think they think like looking back, it's like easy to connect the dots.
Of course.
And so then they're like, am I doing something wrong?
I mean, I think they do to you what you were doing to those entrepreneurial.
100%.
Yeah. They're looking at you saying like, it just works for you. It worked here and here and here. It must be easy for you, or like you had all the answers.
100%.
Yeah.
And so then they're discouraged because they're like, it feels kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
And I can't see the next step. I don't know what I should do next. And what I want to convey is like, I felt the same way.
Yeah.
I remember being so frustrated. I remember with my dad, like I remember him saying like when all this stuff with Lava Storm and that first company, and he's like, it's going to turn out okay. And I remember being mad at him and being like, you don't know that. You're saying that just because you're my dad. And like, I doesn't feel like it's going to be okay. Like I remember being like, can God just show me like
the end?
Not even the end. I'm like, if I could just see like 2 steps.
Yeah.
Or sometimes just the next step. If I could just know what I'm supposed to do next. Yeah. And I focused a lot on that.
Yeah.
And so in it felt chaotic. It felt uncertain.
But I think something that I've noticed about you, and it's kind of with every successful person that I know, is they just take action. They just start moving forward. Even if they don't know where they're going, they get some momentum, and like they just start moving. Like standing still does nothing. Like none of those opportunities are going to find you. You kind of find them as you go. And you go to General Catalyst, and then it goes to MITS. You know what I mean? And it's kind of happening in the moving, in the hustling.
I'm a huge believer in that. Gordon Smith used to be a neighbor of mine. He moved away, but he was the dean of the law school at BYU, and he gave this talk that like resonated with me.
Captured it.
Like I loved it.
Yeah.
And he talked about the Covey principle: begin with the end in mind, which I actually think is true. You have to have maybe something you're going to.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people actually don't begin because they're not totally sure what the end is. And they're like, I feel like I need to figure out the end.
Yeah.
And so I never start.
Yep.
And he gave this talk and he said, like, just begin. And that honestly resonates more with me. And he talked about his experiences where he went to law school. He thought he was going to be more in like social, like law, like do this stuff. And then he like through these experiences found that like corporate law was like his calling. And he's like, looked back and he's like, it's okay that you don't know what the end is.
Yeah.
Just begin, like just start the path. And it's actually okay. Like, and I tell this to my kids and other, college age kids that like I'm interacting with. They're like, what if I started this major and like, it's not right? And I'm like, that's amazing. That means, that's not what you want to do.
My wife is going through like this process right now where she's, we got 5 kids and Callie's 15 and 2. And she kind of, I won't say she's tired of being a mom, but she's like, is this all that there is? And so she's going through this, like, what else am I going to do in the world? And so it's like, well, I'll go back to school. And so it starts out, I'm going to do an English degree because I like writing. Yeah. And it's like, well, I'll do a religion degree because I like religion. And then it's like, well, I'll do an MBA because I want to head up a foundation and she's kind of going through this process, and she'll get to the end of it, be like, that's not right. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, you can't figure out if it's not right unless you figure out if it's not right. Like, keep going, And
exactly.
So she's in that, like,
the iterative process.
Yeah.
It's like greatness in my mind actually happens through iteration.
Little degrees. Yeah. Like,
and so I've realized the faster you can iterate, the faster you'll get there. And a lot of people waste a lot of time saying, I'm going to try and like, the way I'd liken it to business, I'm going to try to come up with the perfect business plan.
Do you know what's the scariest thing about you is it feels so intuitive. Like, I'm like this book junkie. I'm like, read a book a week at half for 20 years, and I'm like, yours just feels so instinctual. Like you pick it up just along the way. And I've always felt that about you. Like what you're describing, I think about Tom Peters, who's like very few people capture excellence in business and the process like him to me.
Yep.
But he talks about this concept of the people and companies that try the most stuff win, and the people and companies that screw the most stuff up win. And that you have to fail fast and a lot. And
actually learning from it.
Yeah.
And I think learning from it is actually the most important thing.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes really important on how you view the iterations.
Yeah.
If you're like, I did this and I failed.
And you give up or you stop.
Yeah. Then it's like you're missing the whole point.
Yeah.
And so when my kids will come in and do something and they failed, and they're like, oh, I can't, like I did something and that did whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't get an outcome they wanted. My first question now is always like, what did you learn?
Yeah.
And they're like, instead of like shame and like
my daughter had this like beautiful experience. We had a party at our house last night. Matt Clayton, he runs this local school, Slope School. And my daughter gets caught cheating. She's cheating on her math and had been for 2 or 3 months. And, he's a friend of ours. And so he comes to us and, says, hey, like this happened. And so we address it. We sit down with her and she's just broken. She's absolutely broken. And then she gets mad and he's the bad guy and goes through this whole process. And then it's like, I got to go back and start over. I was this, and now I got to go back and start. And it was a hard 6 months. It was a really hard 6 months. And I remember sitting down with her and I was like, Ava, like I cheated in high school and I never fixed it. And I cheated all the way through high school and got good grades, but I didn't get an education. And you have a chance to fix it and actually get, and she, went through it and all of a sudden something clicks and she's like excelling. And what went from like this, she's smart enough to work around the system and still get the results, to having to take her medicine. And all of a sudden now she has this confidence and she's like learning from it and becoming. And I was just talking to Matt, and it wasn't easy for Matt. Like Matt had her over to his house and she's mad at him and he's doing math with their one-on for 6 months. And I'm just like, one, you're my hero.
Yeah.
And two, like, it's just like this beautiful life lesson that like failure is not, it's
failure.
It's how you respond.
If you're willing to learn from it. And I think a lot of times failure can bring shame, embarrassment, like all of that. And if that's the only thing you like learn from it, then you get stuck. It's like, well, what you become is scared to fail because I'm like, I don't want to feel shame again.
Yeah.
I don't. And so instead I've like learned this through lots of hard experiences, but it's like, okay, like accept it. I'm okay saying I failed.
Yeah.
And actually that's taken me maybe a lifetime
just
to
so liberating.
Yeah.
Like it's actually like, when you're just good, like being naked and like, it's just what you are.
Exactly.
Like no one can hurt you at that point.
It is liberating where you say, and maybe more importantly, accepting that I can fail.
Yeah.
Like that is what actually has taken me truly a lifetime because I was so scared to fail.
Yeah.
I didn't want to think about it. I
think that's so natural though. I think that's like, I don't think there's anybody that just signs up to like crash and burn. You know what I mean? And I think about door-to-door sales.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest gifts from God that I ever received was having a big piece of my early career be in an industry where you go out and you just fail most of the time.
Yeah.
And you actually have to get really good with rejection and with people being mean. And you have to get emotionally fit.
Yeah.
And there's going to be people that don't like you and there's going to be people that fight against you.
And it won't feel good.
And it'll never
and
feel
I can
good.
Learn from it. If I learn from it, then it truly can be for my benefit.
Yeah.
If I just like am embarrassed and ashamed
or run from it. Yeah. Hide from it.
Or try to run from it, then you'll never like you won't learn the most important lessons. You kind of paint
yourself into a small corner where like there's a small corner of the world where you're not going to get rejected, where you're not going to have failure. And it's going to be a very small life. Like
I don't think it will be not. Well, the funny thing is that I think people put themselves there to protect themselves,
of course,
from like it will be it's like it will be that's good. It's good for me to be there.
Yeah,
but when you're there, it's a empty promise.
Yeah.
It's like it's not good.
Yeah,
it's not fulfilling. It doesn't. And the truth is, there's still pain.
You're running away. And I think about my daughter, and she wanted to run away.
Yeah.
And she blame, and she wanted to run away. And I was so proud of her for half facing the music not feeling shame. Like we're never like, you know what I mean? Like I cheated, like, and
just own it.
Own
it's
it.
like, it's okay. It's okay that it hurts. And it's like, here's like, that is important to me. The other lesson in all of that, and this is like kind of one of the most important one, is just don't give up.
Yeah.
Everybody has bad days where they give up, where they want to give up, where they're just like, I can't do this anymore. And I would just say, well, but ultimately, don't give up.
Yeah.
Like, just keep trying. If you had a bad day, wake up tomorrow morning and don't give up.
Yeah.
Because that maybe has been like, honestly, I think a lot of my success has come because I've just like outlasted.
You won't quit.
Yeah.
I remember I was going through a hard patch in my career, and I came to you for like some advice. And I remember you gave me like just this, I don't even know if you remember this, but it was just this profound advice, which was just stay in the game. Just keep playing. And it was so timely, because I'm like, I just need to stay in the game. I just need to survive. And if you can stay in the game, you live to play. If
you stay in long enough, honestly, like, I'm like, oh, good things will happen.
One day it's raining, the next day the sun's out, you know, but you got to kind of stay in it. And it was just, I've seen that in your career where you've just kind of outlasted people through the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know what I mean? You just kind of like gutted it out. And I actually think that's one of your superpowers is, you know, the ability to endure eloquently. Like with you're not like a rosy optimist, but you do have faith that it's all going to work out. So I think there's like this interesting balance between like, oh, it's all perfect and rainbows, and like, it's really hard and it could be hard for a long time, but at the end it is going to work out, you know?
I do believe that. Yeah. So I am actually optimistic.
But not like Pollyanna, you know what I mean? It's not like
realistic about like it's not up into, at least for me. I'm like, maybe other people's experience, and I'm open to that.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe I'm just not as good as most other like supers, you know, like people that have had success and like are like, oh, up and to the right.
Yeah.
And honestly, that I would read books, and it was like all these things, and I'm just like,
that's not real.
It actually just didn't resonate with me, because I'm like, well, my experience is different. The one book I read that I bawled. I was on a plane, and I was on a plane. I was reading it, and I was bawling. I was sitting in coach, like on a window seat. I remember this like vividly. Was a book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
So good.
Ben Horowitz.
Too much truth in that book.
And the reason why I was crying was because he was talking about all these hard things. Like, he's like, and he, you know, Andreessen Horowitz is like a super successful VC firm, but he was talking about his companies. He's like, I didn't know if it was, I was like, I was pretty sure it was going to fail. Like, I had to fire people that were like smarter than me. I mean, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I bawled because I was like,
I remember something he said in that book. He's like, the struggle.
The struggle
is when you know you should be fired, but they won't fire you. It's like,
but nobody
we don't have anybody.
Exactly. Nobody
who
can.
else is going to do it?
I have that paragraph in my phone. The struggle, like, and it's all this. The struggle is when you go on vacation to feel better and you feel worse. Like, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I finally was like, I felt like that is what I have felt. Yeah, and then I was like, I'm not alone.
He captured it.
It captured. Because a lot of times I'd be like, look around and be like, everyone else feels like they've got all this stuff figured out.
They got this.
And I'm like, I know people think I have it figured out.
Yeah.
And I did, you know, a lot of the time. But there's a lot of times that I'm like, I'm not totally sure what to do. And it was awesome having Todd. We'd sometimes be on the phone. Like, I remember a conversation with Todd during 2008 when things were just like, hard and horrible, and like I remember like having a conversation. If we could get a couple $1 million out of this, like, we'd be. I mean,
you'd have sold it all for just like because
it's like, is this so even going to be? like worth any, are we going to just let everybody down and the whole thing's going to collapse because there's no capital in the world to run our business? And so you kind of go through that enough and you get some context. But those feelings are real. Like we had those, like, and looking back, I'm like laughing at it now. I'm like, wow, that would have been stupid if we did that. And so those were more my experiences. So lots of awesome success. And I like talking about it, but not as much as I like talking about like, hey, it also was hard I'm like, there was a lot of success and a lot of awesome fun, where we were on top of the world. But there was as much like, where you're going through really hard. It's dark. It's like hard and you're unsure. And when I read that book, I was like, I thought, one, I'm like, I'm not alone. Actually, someone else that I would look at and say have achieved things that I want to achieve, like felt the way I did. And then I'm like, not everyone's being totally honest, I think, with like or authentic.
How success works.
Is how it works. At least how it's worked with me.
Yeah. Well, because I think like this world is built to paint a rosier picture about your marriage, about
everything,
your body, about your, you know what I mean? Like I think about like even like you take these social media filters that literally like I see my daughter and it alters your face. And I'm like, that's so messed up. And like it literally like says, oh, you're not good enough. Let me just like alter it to look and it's not authentic.
I know.
And so you literally have like the world showing the rest of the world a view of something that's just not truthful. It's not real. You know what I mean? It's like everybody's playing charades.
And the promise is empty. I think we do that because we think if people think this about me, then I'm going to be happy and fulfilled. And if I have these things,
that I'm not enough. I'll
be happy and fulfilled. And then you do that. And then you are, in my experience, you're more empty. You're less fulfilled. You're like,
I've education for me has always been one of those like insecurities where I look at like these people that, it's like, I got a 19 on the SAT. Like, I didn't even know what the SAT, like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't even know what that was.
Well,
like,
I'm a sociology major from BYU. So,
but I'm like, I dropped out. I did this, and you look to other people, and you're like, man, they just they are so great, and I'm not. And as what I've realized over time, and where I've just kind of got comfortable with myself, is just like my journey is my journey.
Be who you are, and be true to who you are.
And like, I am super educated. I am super smart. But I'm different smart. I've followed my track and I love my track. I love it.
Yeah.
But it's taken a long time. It's hard to like get comfortable in your own.
But that's
skin.
Again, I think that's the purpose.
Yeah.
It's not being where you're at now is easy.
Yeah.
It's how you got here was kind of the purpose.
Yeah.
It like speaks to it's like becoming like God. It's like, well, that's actually kind of the journey is the purpose.
Yeah.
Not like, because anytime I've like gotten to where I thought I wanted to get to, it's like kind of empty. I'm like, this is it. Like, like I want what I wanted and what I still want is the journey.
I mean, we could literally go on for like 10 hours. And so like, we'll have to do this again because there's just other chapters that I'd love to go deep on that we probably don't have the time to do it today, but there are like some like questions that I want to ask you.
Okay.
Talk to me about faith. Talk to me about how faith factors in the journey and how like philosophically for you, how that's impacted decisions that you've made through your life.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would say my faith is like central to everything that I do. But even that has not been like an up and to the right. I've gone through, in my adult life experiences where I've had to like kind of where I've had dark like
times
where I've like, do I believe in God? Do I believe in what I believe in?
Yeah.
Do I, what is important to me?
Yeah.
Am I doing these things because this is what I was taught I should do?
Because I should do it. Yeah.
Or am I doing this is because what I want to do?
Yeah.
And so even with my faith, I've like gone through it's like followed the same pattern.
Yeah.
Where I've had to struggle and I've had to.
Because what's interesting is like the same way I describe probably people looking at your business career, like I would look at that from like your faith. You and Debbie have always been like big time examples for me and Chelsea of just like marriages that kind of keep that central. Like we go on vacation and I'm like, I don't want to go to church. I'm on vacation. Like I want to go to the pool. I want to go get a massage. And my wife's like, we're going to church. I'm like, all right, so we end up going to church and we'll see you guys there. And I'm like, and I've noticed that like you guys have just kind of made a decision that like this is important to us and we're going to have this in our life, but
it probably did switch. Like it switched probably in our adult lives from like what we should do. Like maybe, hey, here's what you should be doing. Like what you should believe or what you should, to like going through experiences where life got hard enough that it's like, what is it that we truly want? Like, do we believe in God? Do we want each other?
Yeah.
Like, is our marriage important to us? Not because it should be, but because we want it to be.
Yeah.
Is raising kids, is, our faith in, our church, is like all of that. And so we've gone through these experiences where, again, we've tried to be authentic with each other about like, hey, I don't know
where you're at in the journey.
Yeah. I don't know. And, all of that has led to where now I'm like so comfortable and confident in my faith, but okay with where other people are in their journey.
Yeah.
And
not judgmental.
Yeah. I just don't have, it's like, it's just not helpful. Actually, it's not actually part of my faith. It's like not part of my faith. And so, and now looking, I'm like all the things, all of the best things that have happened to me that are part of my life that I find my most fulfillment and happiness in come because of my faith.
Yeah.
And those are like my marriage and my relationship with Debbie and my kids and my relationship with God and my moral compass.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, it has led to the things that I want in my life. But also like, and I think in my church, like, there can be sometimes a culture of like shame and like, hey, when you're sinning, which I believe in, I believe that there is a moral compass and that there is a right and a wrong. But that there's all this shame associated, and it's like you should, and I'm like, everybody's struggling.
Yeah.
Like, I actually believe from a like theological standpoint that our purpose is to be here to become like God is.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, that is like, we're far, like there's a long way to go, which means like, there's like a lot to experience and a lot of mistakes to be made.
Yeah, I remember I'm in the MTC and, before my mission, a mission was not in the cards for me, and so like it actually happened pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so I was partying and drinking and I was at school in Montana and then it kind of went to that, I'm going to go on a mission. And I just wasn't emotionally prepared. And I remember getting to the MTC and it was just so painful for me. Like I looked around and I'm like, these people aren't like me. And you know what I mean? Like they got kids getting up and, the 37th time I read the, Bible or Book of Mormon, that was when, and I'm like, and I can still remember I was really struggling. And we go to the temple, and I'm sitting there and I'm just praying in the temple, like very sincere. And I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, am I good enough? And I remember getting this like real voice, so direct. And it just said, I'm so proud of you. I still remember that. And I go back, to that one moment so many times when I think about my relationship with God.
Yep.
And I was like, that's how God is. God's not, because I'd screwed up so many things, and still do. But at that point, I'd screwed up so many things and was kind of asking super sincere, like, hey, I don't know if I'm
good enough.
I'm up for the challenge. And the response, it was just like this abundance of love. And
I came at this, so I actually think that's like such an important lesson. I came at this from such a different way, which was I wasn't, like, growing up, I wasn't that. I didn't party, I didn't drink, I didn't do all that, and I did what I was supposed to do. But it was this was like in the last 10 years that I got to a place where what I realized was I'm like, yeah, I'm a good dad or good husband or in the church or this, but like it was never, I'm like falling short in all of those. I'm not
enough.
I'm not enough.
I need to.
I'm like,
follow
I can't
more rules.
Yeah, I need to be more.
Yeah.
I need to, and I got to a point where honestly, I was broken. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I felt like I was like on the treadmill, and I could not keep up with it. And I was in bed one night with Debbie, and looking back, I'm like, I was testing her. I didn't know I was doing that when it was happening. Because I was wondering, I'm like, does she love me because like I'm trying to do all this stuff, or does she love me just for who I am?
Yeah.
Like the good and the bad, the where I'm at. And so I said to her, I'm like, hey, like, I don't know if like I want to be in the church. What if I didn't want to be in the church?
Yeah.
And I think I was telling her, like, subconsciously, the worst thing I could say to her to see, like, does she love me for
who you are,
me, or does she love me because of what I'm like, what I do?
Yeah.
And she'll tell you this, like, that she feels like she, like God helped give her the words because they weren't ones that she that did scare her. That was, and she just said, I love you. And if you don't want to be in the church, I love you. I want to be with you. And,
holy smokes. That's the good stuff, man.
I remember that night, I think feeling for the first time in my life, like in my soul, like what God's love feels like. And that I thought, if I'm good enough for Debbie, I'm good enough for God. Like, God loves me.
Wow.
Even that I feel inadequate, like in everything.
Yeah.
Like, like I'm not who I should be in any aspect of my life. I'm trying. And like, like the next day I was like, I said to her, I said, I didn't really, I did feel that, but I'm like, but that response was like so important to me, getting to the exact same. And this was 10 years ago. Wow. Like I'd been on a mission. I've been, done all this stuff, but like within the last 10 years, I got to a place where I finally was like, I feel and know God loves me right where I'm at.
Yeah.
And wants me to be better. So I'm like, I'm not like consigning myself to, hey, I'm just, I'm at where I'm at and I'm not going to be better. God wants more from me. But it's okay that is a process.
But there's a different way to get there. And I think that was what I learned in that moment. And I've always tried to lead like that. And even like parent like that. Because it was like this distinct experience that I had that's like.
With love. Like.
Yeah, that like real love.
Yeah.
Like unconditional love. Like that.
I love you.
I don't care what you do.
Exactly.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And I do want you to be better. And you can.
That's right.
I'm cheering for you. Like I'm encouraging you. But it's not from a place of like the whip. It's a place from like truly like love, and I think about that and I think about
it's called a dialectic, which is like two things that can be true that actually oppose each other, that are like opposing to each other, which is hard for our mind to comprehend. But it's like God can love me and want me to be better.
Yeah.
God can be okay with where I'm at now.
But it actually makes complete sense to me. I think about like people that I've led, and you always want them to be better. You know what I mean? But you're also like cheering for them and pulling for them, and you know what I mean? And so it's like that's.
And so that, to me, like I came to that actually like that core thing that's in my soul now.
Wow.
Completely different than you came to it.
Yeah.
But God
I think I needed mine a lot earlier. Like I think I needed that. Like I know I did. I know I needed that really, really early, because that system of like rule following and check boxes, I would not have lasted. I still I don't like it. I like that there's structural things that I don't like, where my faith is like grounded, where I just know it is what it is I'm like, I don't know how everything works, but I do know, I know there's a God.
Yeah.
I know he loves me, and he's got a plan for me.
Yeah.
And he's kind of been there for me every step of the way. And
I feel the same way. And now there's like a peace that has come through learning that, like through that experience that I honestly don't know that I had before.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like anxiousness, like I'm trying and I'm not living up to in anything.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, and it was kind of also in business, like, am I going to fail? Am I good enough?
Yeah.
That kind of maybe was at the core of all this. And like, I've gotten to a place where I'm now comfortable saying I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And I still want to be better.
Yep.
And I can have both of those things and have peace in that, and not say I'm okay, but I really want to be better. And I don't know that I'll be accepted, or I can even accept myself until I am better.
Yeah. Brother, I think we're in like chapter 2, and I have so many other places to go, but I want to be, sensitive of time and everything. And so I'd love to have you come back and do this again and pick up where we left off. But I think just to finish, I really do like honor the man that you are, and like the dad that you are, the leader that you are. And I wouldn't be who I am without you. And so I like,
well, I feel the same way. So thank you for having me. And I love you.
I love you too. Thanks for coming in.